welcome back to episode 2 of the Friday Brew. Rhymes. So I've got my cup of tea handy. Stick it down there for a slurp every now and again. No doubt. Will I finish the cup before the end of the vid? Probably not. If not, I might as well, because if not, it's going to get freezing. So, yeah, it's just a vlog. That's all it is. It's a vlog. Called it the Friday Brew. It's on a Friday. Who doesn't like a brew? Nice and relaxing. Very casual. So, yeah, that's all it is. It's just a vlog. As ever, in the description box, there'll be a timestamp of various topics I'm talking about. Feel free, of course, to skip to something if you want. Maybe a particular topic that I talk about isn't for you. And you just want to fast forward to something that is. I don't know if you can hear them sirens in the background. Hear that? They're not coming for me. Honestly, done nothing wrong. But maybe you didn't even hear it. But if you didn't, there's a lot of police cars going by. Or one, anyway. So, yeah, and then what we're going to do at the end of the vid, we're going to have a load of answers to questions that I was asked 2 weeks ago in the first Friday Brew. So thank you to everyone who asked a question. Very much appreciated. Saved me looking stupid. So thanks for that. So I've got a few to answer. Now, if for whatever reason you want me to answer one of your questions in the next Friday Brew, so let's say 2 weeks from now, then I will. Just ask me in the comment section. And as long as I've never answered it recently, in which case I don't want to repeat myself, or it's nothing super, super personal, like to the point of like, why do you want to know that? Then I'll answer it. Pretty much, I think there's one or maybe 2 questions which were asked last week, which I've answered quite recently, which I'm not going to answer this time, because it will be repetition. But everything else I will answer. So, but yeah, as I said last time, please don't feel obliged to ask me any questions. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel bad, because I'm still going to do the vlog anyway. Like I always do. The questions or the answers to the questions are merely just an addition. There's something else to put on the vlog just to add content to it. That's all it is. So if I don't get any questions, don't worry about it. It just means I won't do the answers. That's all it is. But if you do have questions, then like I say, please ask and I'll probably answer them. So the first thing I want to talk about is something called the Mandela Effect. I don't know how many of you are aware of this Mandela Effect thing, which is knocking about these days. I'd never actually heard of it, but I was on Twitter the other day, and Pete, Snestastic, you've had a mention, I think, Pete, every video I've done this year. Not that you need the subs, closing in on 5,000 subscribers. Bloody hell, mate. Bloody hell. Well done. You thoroughly deserve it, but it's a lot of subscribers. I think sometimes you need to sit back and think, 5,000, wow. I don't think you realise it's, it's a lot, and you deserve it, so you know that. You need to pat yourself on the back a lot more than you do, but with that said, Pete well, all right, I don't want to put words into his mouth, but I think Pete, at least, how do we phrase it? He's leaving the door open to the possibility, whereas with me, I'm just shutting the door firmly in the face of the Mandela Effect. It's nonsense. But I think Pete is maybe a little bit more of a believer. But maybe something, this is something you can answer, Pete, on your own vid or address, and then it's from the horse's mouth. I don't want to speak for you, even though I just kind of did. So anyway, the Mandela Effect, and I've just become aware of this, so, excuse me if I'm not absolutely right, but from what I can gather, it's kind of loosely, some say, connected to potentially aliens, a parallel universe, another dimension kind of taking place. And it's basically where people believe something was the case in the past, and then over time, it's changed. And that's where the aliens and the parallel universe and flipping into different dimensions comes into things. And it's called the Mandela Effect because I guess the originators of this kind of belief, they believe that Nelson Mandela died in prison in 1991. So, like I say, that's why it's called the Mandela Effect. But of course, Nelson Mandela didn't die in prison in 1991. He became president of South Africa in 1994. So that's kind of weird straight away. We've got a big problem here. Got a load of people, 3, who believe he died in 1991, and then the rest of the world are like, hang on a minute, that didn't happen. Now, why do they believe he died in 1991? Well, I watched one vid, or a little segment from one vid, and so I'm just totally taking this person's word for it, so whether it's true or not, I don't know. But this person basically held up this book, or like he cut to like a photograph of this book, where there was a line in it that said, well, Nelson Mandela died in 1991. And then they cut back to the person making the YouTube vid, and they were like, well, see, it must be true because it's in print, because if it wasn't in print, then they'd have got sued, and they don't make mistakes like that. It's out there in a book, and he was using that as his proof. Now, of course, people just make mistakes. People get it wrong. Sometimes, I mean, the amount of books I've got, I mean, if you look up there, you can't quite work it out. But up there, those blue things are a load of Rothman's football yearbooks. I've got a stack of them up there as well, probably got about 25. And every single year, I think now they're called the Sky Sports Football Yearbook, but they used to be Rothman's. And every single year, at the start of a brand new season, a book will come out, one of these with like the blue spine, and it will detail all the statistics from the previous footballing season. So date of births, goals scored, games played, minutes played, final league tables, lineups, just a statistical Bible. That's kind of what it is. But I've got several of those books where there's an error in there, and like a proper football, old school, you know, kind of statistical geek, I've corrected it with like a pen or a pencil, like where they've got the name wrong, or they've got the team that they were transferred to wrong, or the date of birth is incorrect. Now, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Of course it does. The ghostwriters maybe got it wrong, the proofreading was poor, mistakes happen. So this print of Nelson Mandela, this book, which stated that he died in 1991, is obviously just a mistake. Or it's someone who's just going along with these wild kind of theories. I don't really know when it comes to the legalities where it stands, where you can put claims like that out there. I don't know, actually. But anyway, so that book's out there by all accounts. And this person says, oh, that's obviously it must be true. But it isn't true. And in fact, I'd never in my life ever heard of not just the Mandela Effect, but this theory as well, that Mandela died in 1991 in prison. I'd never heard that, ever in my life. We all knew he came out of prison and he became president. I thought everybody was aware of that, but clearly not. But to give another few examples of what this Mandela Effect is, I've wrote a few, I've just kind of copy and pasted them from a YouTube video that I was on. So another example that we're living in kind of a parallel universe, or the government, whoever, aliens have changed things, is apparently the line, Luke, I am your father. Now, what Vader actually says in Star Wars is, no, I am your father. I think that's right. But everybody kind of coins the phrase, quotes the line, Luke, I am your father. He didn't actually say that. But these people who believe in the Nelson Mandela Effect, in the Mandela Effect, I said, oh, no, it actually is Luke, I am your father, but people have changed it over the years. It used to be Luke, I am your father. It's never been Luke, I am your father. That's just a line which has always stuck for whatever reason. And I think my own personal theory, and I'm just trying to use logic here, is obviously if you go back to like the late 70s and the early 80s, we didn't have the internet, or at least not, it wasn't used by you and I. It'd been designed, of course. But nobody really knew what it was. And so back then we had very limited TV channels, radio, books, magazines. And obviously all it would take is for one person, especially if it's like a big magazine or a big news outlet, to put that line out of Luke, I am your father. And everyone else is going to start believing it. Now you can cross-check everything on the internet within a second, doesn't matter what it is. And you can tell whether it's right or wrong. But back then we didn't really have that. So I just think Luke, I am your father just caught on. And then everybody kind of believed it to be the actual line that was said. But it wasn't. So that's that one. The next example they used is the show Sex and the City. But everybody seems to think it's called Sex in the City. Well, I've never thought that for a start. But these people are absolutely 100% convinced that it's called Sex in the City. And they're going out their way to prove it and all that kind of stuff. Again, my theory behind that is when you say Sex and the City, for a start, you don't really pronounce the word and, do you? You never really say Sex and the City. You just say Sex and the City. So I think people mishear it. Sex and, sex in. It just sounds like Sex in the City, but it's not. It's Sex and the City. Everybody knows it. I've never watched it, by the way. Another example, I think this is the last one I'll probably use. Christopher Reeve. Now, Christopher Reeve is the real Superman from like the late 70s up into like the late 80s, give or take. He's kind of the one that I grew up with, and a lot of you would have grown up with as well. Now, people often mistake his name for Christopher Reeves with an S on the end. Now, there's probably two reasons that I can give behind that. One of them, if you go back to the 50s, there was a Superman TV show, and the actor in that was called George Reeves, with an S on the end of it. So you've got George Reeves, who's connected to Superman, because he played it, like I say, in the 50s, in the TV show. And then you've got Christopher Reeve. So people straight away, it causes the mind to be confused. so people sometimes remember it as Christopher Reeves. And I think the other thing as well, and it kind of goes back to my Star Wars example, is if you remember that all this was well before the internet, before we all had it, before anyone really had it. And so we would have read about Superman and Christopher Reeve, would have read about his upcoming projects. And if it was in print, or even if it was said on TV, what would they have said, or how would it have been phrased? They would have said something along the lines of, you know, in Christopher Reeves's latest movie. So I think people see that in print, and they do, you know, kind of miss off the apostrophe, and they see the Reeves, and they think that his name is Reeves. It's not, it's Reeve. I mean, it's a bit like when Tom Cruise releases a movie. It'll say in print or on TV, somebody will say, in Tom Cruise's latest movie, but nobody knows him as Tom Cruise's. It's Tom Cruise, obviously. So this, I've done it again, the Nelson Mandela. The Mandela Effect is quite simply absolute bollocks. People with far too much time on their hands, but it's also quite worrying as well. If you think about it, it's pretty worrying and concerning that people out there genuinely believe this kind of nonsense based on nothingness, no proof whatsoever. And I can't work it out myself, but that's the world we live in, isn't it, really? Now, admittedly, I might be missing out some facts. I've watched 2 videos, that's all I've watched, and I've only just been exposed to this, the Mandela Effect. So, by all means, if you're into it, and I don't mean to, you know, genuinely, if you are into it, I'm not like taking the piss. Hey, listen, who knows, you might be right. I highly doubt it, because it just seems a little bit silly. But I don't want to dismiss people. You might have your reasons, but I would be very interested in hearing what those reasons are. But yeah, the Mandela Effect, have you heard of it? If not, well, I've just given you a rough example as to what it's about. It's a load of nonsense. It's basically just people remembering things incorrectly. That's all it is. You know, or taking other people's word for something, and then through generations that being passed down, and you believe in it, but you've never actually checked out the facts yourself. You're just relying on other people. Or, like I say, going back to when you were a kid, and you remembering how something was, yeah, you just got it wrong. You got it wrong back in the day, and you've always believed it. I think we can all give examples of things like that. So yeah, that's the Mandela Effect. Now, next thing I want to talk about are a few things that I've been watching recently. The first one, which I watched a couple of nights back, and it's Rogue One, Star Wars Rogue One. A bit of a precursor, if you like, to A New Hope. And yeah, this came out in 2016, so it's still very recent, of course. But I had an opportunity to watch it at the cinema, and I didn't. I think I talked about it, and I turned it down, as I did with The Force Awakens. There's a couple of guys from work going, but I just couldn't be bothered, a bit lazy, and I'd probably rather, back then, have watched a YouTube vid or something. So no regrets. I'd rather, to be honest, watch it in the privacy of my own home, or with my wife, or whoever, you know, but I didn't really fancy watching it at work. Just wasn't in the mood. And I am a big Star Wars fan, or at least I used to be when I was a kid. I was massively into it. I had all the figures, books, the Panini sticker album. I had, you name it, I had a lot of Star Wars toys. I made a couple of Christmas vids. If you watched them, then I'd have talked about the toys I got. Obviously, it would have been the 80s one. I didn't get them in the 90s. Well, I say I didn't get them in the 90s. Remember when the Phantom Menace came out, excuse me, and they re-released a load of toys. And back then, it was the late 90s, and I did start buying a few of them. I didn't play with them, and I kept them in their packing. But yeah, I did technically start buying a few. Should I be admitting that? Maybe not. So yeah, so I am a Star Wars fan, but in recent years, I've kind of just gone away from it a little bit. You get a little bit older, you don't watch it as much, and you just kind of forget about it, really. But I did watch The Force Awakens going back earlier last month, I guess, in January. I talked about that was it the last vlog, or recently anyway? And it was good. I thought it was very good. And but yeah, watch that vid if you've not seen it. I talk about it in a bit more depth. But I've only just now got to watching Rogue One, and I thought it was quite good. I mean, let me just say from this point as well, I probably will, to be honest, reveal like a few spoilers or skirt around it anyway. So if you don't want to know what happens in Rogue One, then maybe you should skip this bit, because I'm probably going to say a few things. I think what I'm going to say most people know anyway, to be honest. It's kind of well known. But there's your little warning in advance. If you don't want to know anything about Rogue One, maybe skip this segment. So yeah, I'm going to go through a few of the characters here, and then I'll talk a little bit about the plot and a little bit what happens and my feelings and thoughts and all that kind of stuff. So I will say that the characters for me, I quite like the characters. There were some good new additions to the franchise, but they were never really characters who held any great weight, any great emotional weight. I wasn't really that bothered with the fact that pretty much all of them ended up being killed off. Pretty much all of them. There's one or two who technically you don't see being killed, but it's pretty obvious that they were. But you don't actually see it. But yeah, like I say, it's somewhat obvious. But I quite like the characters for the most part. For example, you've got Jin Erso. She's like the main character in the movie, really. And her father, Galen Erso, is partially responsible for creating the Death Star. He's like a scientist. He's a human. He's not like an alien or anything. He's a good guy at heart, but he works for the Empire, and he's forced back, really under duress, to work for them again when he's just living a quiet, retiring life. But they need his help, like I say, to create or to help with the creation of the Death Star. So he goes off and does that very much under duress. And Jin, in the meantime, who's his daughter, who's very young at the time, I think like maybe 4 or 5 years of age, she kind of escapes, and ultimately that's kind of what happens. So you've got her. Now, she's quite a decent character, quite interesting in a way, but largely forgettable, like most of them, but still interesting additions nonetheless. Next up, you've got, these are in no particular order, you've got Chirrut Imwe, if I'm pronouncing that right. Now, he's a kind of a cool-looking guy. He's blind, so straight away you're thinking, well, bloody hell. Not being blindest or anything. But he's a really cool kind of, as far as I'm aware, he's not Force-sensitive, but he's more like someone who's spiritually aware with the Force. He's got this quote which goes along the lines of, I'm one with the Force is with me. He repeats it regularly for like maximum kind of spiritual concentration, to see him through like the bad times. And he tends to work for the most part. Apparently there's a theory out there that he is Force-sensitive. I'm not sure on that one. But again, he's one who does die, well, they all do, like I say, in the movie. Then you've got a guy called Baze Malbus. That's his sidekick, Chirrut Imwe. His guardian, if you like, his friend. They kind of come as a pair. He's got this really kind of cool, big machine gun, as well. I say machine gun, kind of like laser gun, really cool weapon. And so he's a kind of an interesting character. You don't see a great deal of him, really, to be honest. But they kind of work as a pair. They're not a couple, as in like in a relationship. Or at least not that I'm aware. Then they're just kind of friends, and they follow each other around and all the rest of it. And particularly, obviously, because Chirrut Imwe's blind, so really he needs this other guy to lead the way, I guess. You've got who else have you got? You've got Orson Krennic, who I've got written down here. Yeah, I think he works kind of like for the he works for the military, for the Empire, of course, with the Advanced Weapons Research Sector or something like that. Yeah, very kind of forgettable in a sense. I mean, I know I started this by saying they're all kind of really good additions, and I've just basically said they're all forgettable. But again, I want to stress in the sense that you don't really feel an emotional attachment to them. So yeah, it came across as a little bit weak in places, really. I've got to be honest. But what I will say is that I like his uniform. It looks pretty cool. The white uniform, the white cape, that you can't argue with that. That does look pretty good. You've got K2SO, who's like a droid. He is an Imperial droid who's been reprogrammed by Cassian Andor, who I'll touch upon next, I think. And now he's on the side of the rebellion. Yeah, just think of it like kind of a BB-8, but one who talks. Sort of like just another C-3PO, if you like, really. Quite funny, quite charming, quite cute in a way. And yeah, a decent addition, but again, another one who ultimately gets polished off. But he's a robot, so technically he could come back. Or anyone could come back, really, couldn't they? Because it's just fantasy. But I highly doubt anyone will be coming back in any other movies, unless they make kind of spin-offs that happened before this, but that would be kind of weird. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Cassian Andor. So Cassian Andor is he's part of the rebellion. He's almost like a very poor man's Han Solo. That's kind of what it is. He's got his sidekick, which is K2SO. So it's a little bit like Han Solo and Chewbacca. It doesn't really work. You never really feel any kind of emotion towards him. He just doesn't. It's not a bad character, but it's just someone who you're not really that bothered about. A little bit throwaway. And then you've got Bodhi Rook. Bodhi Rook is an Imperial cargo pilot who defects to the Rebel Alliance. You don't see him a great deal in it. At least he doesn't have a great deal to say. But yeah, again, it's... What can you say? C-3PO and R2-D2 make a cameo appearance, but it's almost like a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing. Vader's in it. he's in it kind of maybe halfway through, but the main part when you see him is right at the end, and that's pretty cool. I do like that, and he kind of sets up the next episode, i.e. A New Hope, quite nicely. I mean, if you go back to like The Force Awakens, and I did talk about this, there was a few things in there, a few kind of light-hearted, humorous moments, and I will be honest, I laughed in The Force Awakens. I thought they were quite funny, they were well-timed, there wasn't too many of them, and they were genuinely funny. Now, I've not watched it back, I've not rewatched it, so will it be funny second time around? Maybe, maybe not. And subsequently further down the line, I'll have to wait and see. But this was similar in the sense that they had more one-liners. And again, I've got to be honest, I found them funny, but I will say two things. One, I thought there was a few more than there were in The Force Awakens. And two, maybe more crucially, they all arrived really fast, one after the other. It was like a slapstick. And it got to the point where, even though it worked, it got to the point where in my head, as I was watching it, I was like, all right, it is funny, but have they taken this a bit too far? There was too many too quickly. They're arriving too fast. And I thought, I hope this doesn't go on like this, because by this time, it was only about 35, 40 minutes into the movie. And it goes on, I think, for about 2.5 hours, well, about 2 hours, 15 minutes. It's quite long. And I thought, if this carries on, it's almost going to be borderline a comedy slapstick movie. And that's obviously not what I want. But I will say that after that kind of 5-10 minute period of maybe 6 or 7 or 8 one-liners, which, as I say, were funny to be fair, after that they kind of knuckled down. And I don't think there was any after that. It became very kind of serious. And I found, in my opinion, I found it quite tense watching it. I really did. So, but again, you know, it's one of those things where I've gone on Twitter and I put a tweet out and I said I really liked it. I remember saying an easy 7 out of 10. And this one person replied, who we mutually follow each other. I don't know him massively, but we occasionally kind of exchanged comments and stuff. And he replied back with quite strong words, really. And he was like, I hated it. He said, I hated Rogue One, hated The Force Awakens. I'm never going to pay, ever, to see a Star Wars movie again. And I replied back, I was like, strong words, what makes you think that? And he referred me to this YouTuber who I'd never heard of. I've subsequently found out they've got like 1.2 million subscribers, but I've never heard of them. And I clicked on a vid and I found it really grating. It's like this kind of persona he puts on, this character, this voice, trying to be funny and swear, and I just didn't like it, really. I thought it was a bit rubbish. And not just that, but I didn't agree with what he said in the review. Each to their own, obviously. But it's like, I was watching it, and this is like a person with over 1 million subscribers, and it was like, I was watching it thinking, you do realise it's a kind of a precursor. It's almost like he didn't know why things were happening the way they were. It was really odd. I don't know if it was a kind of a piss-take review or what, but I just thought it was really strange. Anyway, so I didn't agree with that. But yeah, I was really surprised by this guy's reaction. He really seemed to hate genuinely the movie. Well, he said he did. He said he hated it. And yeah, interesting. Now, I will say the ending of the movie as well, I found to be quite strange. Not just in the sense that they killed everybody off, because in a way they kind of had to, given what happens at the start of A New Hope. They had to kind of do that, I guess. But what I will say is right at the end, you've got Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor. They're kind of embracing on the beach, having kind of escaped, the building that was coming to pieces, essentially, being blown up. Because what had happened is the Death Star had fired down, essentially, on the planet, and it was about to blow the entire place up into smithereens, literally obliterate it from the universe. And so they're kind of embracing on the beach, and in the background you see like the puff of atomic blast, I guess, kind of coming towards them. It's clearly going to kill them. And so they start to sort of embrace, the camera kind of focuses on them, the music kind of plays. And then right at the very end, the very last scene you see in the movie is where Cassian Andor, he looks towards almost, but not quite at the camera. He certainly looks away from where he was looking. And it's almost as if someone said cut and then he looked away. It's a combination of things. It's either the worst sloppy editing you've ever seen, it could be that, but I'd find that surprising because it's a Star Wars movie. How did they miss that out? Or it was some really potentially pretentious director or someone who said, hey, wouldn't it be a really good idea if the very last second he kind of looks away to make you kind of think, like really profound and all the rest of it. But it doesn't work because the first thing you think is, they've missed that, sloppy editing. So it either was sloppy or it was kept in pretentiously. It doesn't work for me. But yeah, kind of a pretentious sort of look away as if to think, oh my God, it's kind of happening. What can you do about it? But nah, it didn't work. I thought it looked really lame, seriously lame. So there was that. But also leading up to that, they've, all right, this planet is about to blow up. The clouds, the fire's kind of coming towards them to consume everything. But this is a base where there are ships everywhere. There's X-Wings, probably downed, admittedly, TIE fighters, other ships that are around. They could have got on one. They can both fly. Well, can they both fly? Well, certainly Cassian can anyway. He's a pilot. So there's no excuses. He's not injured. It's not like he can't walk or anything. I mean, he did get knocked down. He fell down a little bit. Was he shot? Or was he shot at? But then I think he kind of fell down. But he's fine, you know. So they could have found somewhere, technically, a ship to escape on. But they didn't. So I found that a little bit weak. I've got to be honest. But what can you do? Like I say, I know technically why they had to kind of, or at least they felt they had to kind of kill everybody off. And ultimately, as I said earlier on, you never really hold any emotional involvement with the characters. Not really. So after watching the ending, you don't really think, oh, I wish so-and-so had survived. It doesn't really matter. Not really. But they could have done it. They could have, if they wanted to, had some people surviving. So that was obviously a deliberate choice. And then the last thing really I'll say, as I have a quick sip of tea, is that there's CGI on this of Moff Tarkin and Princess Leia. And both of them, particularly Moff Tarkin, I thought looked really good. Now, you can kind of tell that it's CGI, but I've got to be honest, you know, it's starting to get to that point where you're like, bloody hell. Because, I don't know if you heard that car go by there, like a truck or whatever it was. Obviously a truck in America. So bloody obnoxious. It's unbelievable, those engines. But yeah, Peter Cushing, now he died in 1994. He obviously played Moff Tarkin. So getting him back, quite literally impossible. But yeah, the CGI they used I thought was very, very good. And if that's looking great now, imagine how good it's going to look in 5, 10, 20 years. It's going to be, basically, it's just going to look like, it's going to replicate reality. It really is. And also I like that in a sense. I mean, it's a bit weird, but it opens up the door to being able to do anything. You can bring any characters back. You can remake any movies. I know some purists might not like that, but you can have like a new Back to the Future movie. Now, obviously, I know Michael J. Fox is still alive, but obviously he's got a big problem as well with his illness in regards to being able to make another movie. But technically, they could. He could voice it, and they could get someone else to come in. But like I say, maybe that's kind of dangerous territory for some. Maybe some wouldn't like that. But to me, that's quite exciting at the same time. If it's done right, if it's done tastefully, and if it'll be a good movie. So I'm totally in favour of that, at least in principle. So yeah, I really like the CGI. I've heard a lot of people saying it looks pretty average. Some said they saw it and instantly they could tell that it was CGI. For me, well, I knew it was going to happen. So I knew, and also I knew Peter Cushing died. So it wasn't that much of a shock. But I could clearly tell that it looks brilliant. It really does. So, but at the same time, I could also clearly tell it was CGI. But it's looking very, very good. Now, me and my wife watched a movie called, what was it? The Santa Claus. I think there's 3 of them. I can't remember who's in it. Is it what's that? Oh God, I can't remember the guy's name. Is it the one who was in Elf? What was he called? Can't remember. What's his name? I can't remember the guy's name. It'll come to me in a minute. Will Ferrell? Maybe he wasn't in it. But anyway, someone was in that playing Santa Claus in that. And the special effects in that. Now, it was 1994, oddly enough, when Peter Cushing died, coincidentally. But the special effects in that are dreadful. They look so bad. So we've come all that way, which in the scheme of things, 1994 is not too long ago. Not really. And yeah, the CGI is looking really, really good now. So anyway, I'll sum that up. Did I mention all the characters? I'm just kind of quickly skirting through them. I think I did. If I missed 1 or 2 off, well fair enough. But yeah, I really liked it. For me, Rogue One, I think, as I said on my tweet, an easy 7 out of 10. I could maybe have gone a bit higher. I like it. Now, it'll be interesting to see The Last Jedi, because I know a lot of people hate that one. They really do. But I can't comment on it until I've seen it. There's a couple of silly things I've heard about it. Leia apparently doing some kind of Superman impression. Again, we were speaking of Superman earlier on. I'd have to see it myself before I comment. So maybe in a couple of months' time, when I get around to watching that, I think it's the Blu-ray. Does that come out in April? So I'll probably buy it then, and I'll probably talk about it in April, May, on a Friday Brew, I guess. So yeah, we talked about that for ages, didn't we? Bloody hell. Still got all the questions to come. So Do you know what? I did have another couple of things I was going to talk about that I'm watching, but because I've gone on for ages, and it'll be a very long video if I don't skip to the questions, maybe we'll talk about those other two things that I'm watching next week or in 2 weeks' time. So let's go to the questions. Everybody who asked me one, I'm now going to kind of scroll through and take a look. There may be like a few jump cuts. I mean, what I may do is put the question up on the screen. Of course, I may not. We'll see. So the first one, by Pete, Snestastic. Thanks, Pete, for these questions. 5 altogether, which is good, something to talk about. Question number 1. Since living in America, what difference have you noticed between British and American women, specifically? In brackets, personality, attractiveness, etc. Well, attractiveness, I mean, I'm married, so obviously I'm not looking, clearly. If my wife's not watching this, then, well, every now and again you have a bit of a look at window shopping. That's all it is. But no, joking aside, I think attractiveness, you get that anywhere, to be honest. You know, you name the country on earth, you know, you're going to find someone who's attractive. Whether they're attractive to you or not, you know, it depends what you find attractive aesthetically. So yeah, it's not too dissimilar to the UK, clearly, in that aspect. Personality-wise, I mean, that's hard to say. I think Americans in general, women and just Americans, obviously they're louder, and I don't say that in like a rude way. I just think generally they are louder. I think it comes down to as well more confidence, freer to say what's on their minds. Like, what's the big deal? They just say what they want, within reason. Obviously, you get people who are very, very shy and very reserved. You get that everywhere. So not every American fits that stereotype of being loud and obnoxious. That really isn't true. It really is a stereotype. But with that said, generally speaking, I do find them louder. Even the ones who think they're quiet, they're louder than Brits. But I think as Brits, most of us are quite reserved. But other than that, it's hard to really answer that. Personality-wise, I think obviously, you know, being a Brit, that helps. I think women in particular, well, some men, of course, naturally, but usually women tend to like the British accent. So maybe that's what you need, Pete. You need to get yourself over to America, mate, on holiday, and find yourself an American girl who's into country music as well. Maybe that's because I know you like that. So yeah, it's really hard to describe, to explain that. But I think not so much. It's not really directly answering your question, but just to touch upon another difference between Britain and America with men and women is I find them, believe it or not, again, because of all the stereotypes that you'll hear, I find American people more respectful to each other, to people in general, you know. Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. There's an example, it's a silly example to use, really, but it's the one which immediately springs to mind. But I remember at our old house, so going back like 4 and a bit years ago, still in the same kind of part of town-ish, but there was a situation where outside our neighbour's house, and we lived in, like, at the time, like sort of a duplex, so kind of just think of it like an apartment, if you like, a ground floor thing, a flat or whatever, or a semi-detached house is another example to use, but one floor, you know, no stairs, because most Americans don't have stairs in the house, just the way it is. So yeah, outside of her house, on her side of the building, there was all these kids, because there was like an alleyway and there was a school further on, so sometimes some kids would kind of cut through it on her side. Not often, but sometimes they would. And there was some kids there around about 14, 15, give or take, and they weren't being like massively noisy or anything, but they were smoking, and there was probably 6 or 7 of them, and to some it could have looked maybe intimidating. And the neighbour at the time, Mary was her name, and she came out, and obviously because they were standing almost on her kind of front garden, almost, and she came out and she's like, excuse me, you know, would you mind moving on? You know, you're making a bit of noise, and you're smoking as well, you shouldn't really be doing that. And I thought, well, because I was kind of eavesdropping, like sort of like a typical Brit, you know, curtains twitching, like looking outside, because I heard like this noise, and I thought, oh God, this could kick off. If this is in the UK, the chances are the kids would tell her where to go. And one of them in particular, he kind of went, oh, he said, yeah, absolutely sorry. He says, are we disrespecting you by smoking? Would you like me to kind of put it out? And she went, well, actually, she said, yes, you are. You are disrespecting me. It's bad. You shouldn't be doing it. It's bad for your health. And I just don't like to see it. And he put it out. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And they all apologised. Oh, sorry about that. We didn't mean to cause any offence. And off they went. And you would never see that in the UK. You'd probably have the person get the cigarette and put it out on their bloody head. You know, that's what they do. They're so aggressive in comparison. You know, that in my experiences, very kind of mouthy, very lippy in the UK for the most part. Not everybody. So I think within society, there's a lot more respect. But again, for a Brit watching this, you probably never would believe that because you hear of all the crime going on and all the things that make the news. But yeah, on an individual basis, I find people really pleasant and quite charming and very, very humble, really, and definitely very loud and maybe overconfident. But I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But that's just in my experience. Which current gen console are you currently using the most? Well, do I have a prop? I kind of do. Let me stretch over and grab this. Now, if you'd have asked me this in around about, I don't know, say 6 months ago, I'd have said the Xbox One. If you'd have asked me around about Christmas, I would have said the PS4. And now you can guess that I'm going to say this, the Switch. I've been playing this quite a lot recently. But I go through phases, as I just displayed with that answer. Yeah, I'm really enjoying the Switch. I like the portability of it, being able to take it wherever you want, play it on the go. But I do still like the modern gen, old school in a sense of sitting down in front of the telly with a PlayStation or an Xbox controller. But right now it's the Switch. But it will come full circle again. It really will. It depends what's out at the time, what games I'm interested in, and all the rest of it. But yeah, the Nintendo Switch right now, it will change. Now that you have dipped your toe back into the movie world, will you continue to catch up on recent films? I think I will, yes, but maybe never to the point where I was, i.e. watching movies all the time, really knowing what was coming out, watching the Oscars, reading up on, with magazines, Empire Film, or the equivalent now, subscribing to loads of movie channels. I don't think that will happen. I don't think I'm ever going to be into it as much as I was, but it's hard in a sense to deny that, because obviously I've watched Rogue One, I've just talked about it. There's a couple of other things which I was going to talk about, which I'll save for next time. Maybe Stranger Things Season 1 I talked about, The Force Awakens. Not too long ago, I guess, although thinking about it, it was quite a while. I watched Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So yeah, I am watching a lot more TV. I'm watching a lot more movies than I have done for many years. But whether it's to the degree of maybe someone like yourself, probably not. But time will tell. You never know. Question number 4. Over the years, we have both gone back and forth with our collections. Do you feel that you have now found your comfort zone? Well, I think for me, I don't think I've ever not known what I want. I've always known what I want. My problem has been buying things that maybe I was never really interested in to begin with. It's that influence of YouTube, isn't it? You know, watching someone showing off like a SEGA Master System. It's not a great example to use because I haven't went off and bought one. But, I am that kind of personality where I can watch someone make a vid about the Master System, show off all their games, talk about great games, and I'll look at it and I'll think, oh, do you know what? I wouldn't mind getting one of those. It looks pretty good. And then I'll have a look on eBay, just browsing, and then sometimes, rarely, but sometimes I'll then buy it. But really, I didn't really want one. I was just convinced into buying one because someone else is really liking it. Probably because, they've got massive nostalgia for it. So, yeah, I've never really wavered on that. I've always loved the Amiga. I've always loved the ST, the SNES. I've always loved the same things. It's nothing new to me in that sense. But yes, I have bought things in the past on the influence, or from the influence of others. But ultimately, do I feel I found my comfort zone? Yeah, pretty much. Never say never to trying new things out, or to buying things, or even rebuying things that maybe I had years ago. I think sometimes on YouTube, people will buy and sell stuff. Now, unless they buy and sell all the time and it does look a bit weird, I think people sometimes come down on people too hard for buying something back. They hold them to it. If you show something on YouTube and then maybe you change your mind, you buy it, you sell it back, or you sell it and you buy it back, I should say, people remember that. And in the comment section, like, you said you weren't going to buy that again. And it's like, mate, that was 5 years ago. I changed my mind. Or, whatever the circumstances. Maybe you sold it because you needed the money, and you decided to buy it back. Or maybe you bought it back because you looked at it and thought, you know what, maybe I didn't give it a fair crack of the whip. Whatever the... Question number 5, I thought I'd get one of these questions. Have you noticed any differences living under Trump? Or does it feel like business as usual? Well, you see, for me, and this is the thing to remember, for me it's fine. I've not noticed anything different directly that personally affects my life. You know, go to bed, get up in the morning, the sun's shining, or if it's raining, it's still happening. You go to work, you stick the telly on, you talk to the same people, you come home, you go shopping. Everything is the same. Life carries on. So nothing has changed as far as I'm concerned. But I guess it depends who you are. It depends maybe whereabouts in the country you live in, and also how seriously do you take it. You know, how far could it get before it gets out of control to the point where it could affect other people? Maybe that's a bigger question to kind of ask. I mean, there was something on the news quite recently. There was a guy not that much older than me, I think in his early 40s, and he was basically deported back to Mexico, having been in America since he was 10. Deported, and I think he's got a kid or a couple of kids, he's married. Now, how can that be allowed to happen? He spent 30-odd years living in America, paying his taxes, and he's deported. But, I mean, that's just dangerous. And it does make me think, I'm not even sure that's anything directly to do with Trump. This probably happened in the past, but obviously it's highlighted more than ever now. But it did make me think, and has done, I'm not going to lie, whether it's scaremongering or not, it has made me think, well, hang on, you know, there's a big emphasis on, like, Muslims and cracking down on immigration, all that kind of stuff, and asylum seekers. You know, they're kind of targeting, if you want to use that word, Muslims, and then Mexicans, the wall and all that kind of stuff. How long could it be before it does affect someone like me? Now, it sounds ridiculous, and I'm not even going there. I'm not, you know, subscribing to that. I'm not saying that is happening or could happen or would. It probably wouldn't. But I'm just saying it sets a bit of a dangerous precedent. Like, how long could it get before people go, we don't want anyone here from another country? And that's very dangerous when society kind of gets that way. You know, in a way, I understand why people are scared, of course, but really, I think a lot of it is just a fear over nothing, really, for the most part. And the only other thing I'd say as well is, yeah, I'm not a voter of Donald Trump. I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump. I will be absolutely honest with you, excuse me, and say that I thought, this is before he became president, I was one of those many, because I talked to many, who thought it would be funny if he became president, so we'd kind of laugh at it and go, oh, how stupid is this? But then when it actually happened, it was like, wow, it's kind of gone beyond funny now. That is staggering. But I did think it would be quite funny if he was, just for the novelty factor, the fun factor, the hilarity of it all. But of course it has bigger ramifications and connotations. So, yeah, I'm not a voter of him, but I do understand to a degree why people did vote for him. People are scared, people have a fear, and they don't feel as if they're being listened to. It's the same kind of with Brexit. It's different than Trump, of course, but also there are similarities. And I think people need to listen as to why people are unhappy. And if people listen, then we may solve these issues. But I think on the far left, they don't want to listen. And if you don't listen to people, then people are going to become more right-wing than you can imagine. So we've got to get that kind of middle ground back, which most of us are kind of middle ground. We're kind of left on most things, pretty much central, and right on a few things here and there. Pretty much most people watching that or watching this fit that kind of category, kind of middle ground politics. So yeah, and also the last thing I'll say on that is, you know, people who say, I know it's Twitter, but people who say everybody who votes for Donald Trump is a lunatic or a racist is obviously nonsense. I know some people who voted for Donald Trump, a few people, and it's basically because they didn't like Hillary. She wasn't much better. I know in the media she probably was in the UK portrayed as being like the ultimate great answer. She wouldn't have been. She'd have been pretty bad as well. Would she have been better? Probably. I'm not denying that. But would she have been great? No, definitely not. Obviously, living in America, you see a lot more. You're exposed a lot more to how things work. And I didn't really see a lot of the stuff that I see now when I was living in the UK. So you've got to remember that as well. It depends what news outlet you're watching. They can be very kind of on one side, left, right, in between. So yeah, I don't like it when people kind of target everybody who voted for Donald Trump is a maniac. It's just not the case. It's a really stupid thing to say. But I didn't vote for him, and I wouldn't have voted for him, to be honest. But anyway, I think we've kind of done that. Next set of questions, 3 from Tom, which is King Arthur. Yeah, like I say, his name's Tom. I used to call him Art Unbelievable. That's the fault again of Pete Snestastic, who used to call him Art in the comment section, so I did as well. I thought that was his name. And then like 2 years later, he's like, my name's Tom. But I'm calling you Art for the last 3 years, mate. Anyway, so question number 1. You can clearly see you have lots of nostalgia for console and computers from the 80s and 90s. Yeah, there's 2 up there, the Amiga and the ST. But do you have any nostalgia for arcade machines? Being in America, you're in a great position to pick up some classics the likes of us have to import. Not really. I mean, I have nostalgia from when I used to go there when I was a kid, but in terms of buying them, I'm not really that interested. That said, I am watching an arcade cab. Now, I'm not going to buy it. I'm just watching it. It's on my eBay watch list, just to kind of keep an eye on, to see how much they go for, and just to remind myself that maybe one day I might want one. So I wouldn't mind getting that. Is it like a candy cab? I don't know what they call these things, Tom, to be honest. I know you're really into it and all the rest of it, but for me, it goes in one ear and out the other. But I am kind of fascinated by it. But yeah, but I do like a lot. In fact, I've just seen one of your questions, question number 3, and it does say including arcade on that one. So maybe I'll save what I'm about to say now for that. So let's move on to question number 2. What are your top 3 favourite systems, console or computers, of all time? That's really, really hard. You ask me tomorrow or any other day and I'll give you a different answer. Are we taking nostalgia into consideration here? Because if we are, you'd get a different set of answers. But just to give you an answer, top 3, let's say, these are in no particular order. We'll go with the Commodore Amiga. I just love the Amiga. It's really, I mean, technically I love the ST more. Again, there it is. Just through nostalgia, but playing the Amiga, I played it at the time when I had my ST, my friends had Amigas, and it generally, not exclusively, but generally had the better version than the ST, 90% of the time, to be honest. So yeah, let's say the Amiga, let's say the PlayStation. When the PlayStation came out, it was just a whole new ballgame. I was blown away. Games on CD, so futuristic. The graphics took it to a new level. It was a really big leap, from 16 to 32-bit. I love the PlayStation. Always will. So we'll say the PlayStation. And then one more. I mean, there's a few obvious ones, but I'm thinking, should I go with one of left field? How about... remember you're asking me this now, and I will change my mind if you ask me, say, next week or any time in the future. Controversially, I'm going to go with the 360. I'm going to go with the 360 because the 360 and the PS3, so maybe I could choose that as well, or one or the other. Those systems, for me, at the time, they got to a point where gaming reached a level where me and my friends wanted it to reach when we were kids. When we used to think, what do we want games to look like? We wanted them to look like what the 360 and the PS3 did. And yeah, big kind of wide open worlds, speech, lots of it, commentary in games, on football games. And the PS1 had it to a degree, but nowhere near as much. Yeah, it just got to that point where the worlds were big, the graphics were very, very good, replicating to a very small degree in hindsight, but at the time it seemed real, kind of replicating real life, or as good as it got. Now, I know obviously in subsequent generations, like the PS4, the Xbox One, and further on down the line, the longer technology goes on, games are going to look better. So I guess I could always use, the latest console as my example, as my favourite, because it's always getting to what we wanted it to as a kid. That point of, i.e., it looking amazing. But I think the 360 was probably the first time, and the PS3, where it started to get to that point where it was like, yeah, this is what, when we were kids, we wanted games to look like. So I'd say that. And the 360's got a great library of games. I don't really play it these days, kind of moved away from it, but I will eventually one day get back into it. One day. And I'd probably choose it over the PS3 in the sense that the installation, like updates and stuff, were done within seconds. If you needed to update a game, excuse me, it's coughing throughout this. If you needed to update a game, then it was done within seconds. The PS3, the installations were a nightmare more often than not. So yeah, controversial, because I didn't obviously mention the SNES and the Mega Drive, which I love, but as I say, ask me that question another time, the SNES would be in it. So that's what I'm going to answer it there, with the Amiga, the PlayStation, the 360. It's kind of weird, actually. Can I change those answers? Regretting it already. What are your top 3? This is question number 3. What are your top 3 video games of all time? I mean, this is quite... Come on, mate. Come on. Pack it in. That question is way too difficult to answer. But and then in brackets, any platform including arcade. Well, let me just name a few arcade games because I know you love that. And I kind of alluded to it at question number 1. I used to love playing on Turtles, the Turtles 4-player arcade cab. I used to love that. I remember completing it with 3 other friends, whacking the buttons and all the rest of it. I'm sure there's some kind of cheat mode or something happened in the game because our credits ran out. But if you rapidly press like the start button or something, combined with something else, our credits would kind of go up in the corner. And we didn't put any more money in, and they just kept going up. So every time we died, we just keep whacking this button and the credits would go up. So we finished the game. So I don't know how that happened. It was really weird, but I swear it did happen. So I'd say that. There was one at the time directly opposite that. This was in the UCI cinema, directly opposite the Turtles one behind. And it was it called like WrestleMania? It had big sprites like Big Boss Man. I'm sure he was in it. Hulk Hogan must have been. Legion of Doom, that sounds familiar. What's his name? The Ultimate Warrior. Basically anyone from like the late 80s, early 90s. And the sprites looked massive. The crowd were there, and the ring. That looked great. I'd love to get that. Like a proper cab. Not just like the what you call it, like the insides of it, like a circuit board or something. I'd want the actual cab with the artwork and all that kind of stuff. That would look really cool. Street Fighter 2, played that on the arcades. Yeah, loads really. There was another one as well. I forget what you call it. It was a football game made by Konami. It was almost like borderline overhead, kind of like an overhead isometric, and the sprites were quite small, but you could score some amazing goals. I remember that one. And I think the last kind of level, you had to work your way up like through like a tournament. You'd play like an ultimate team, and I think they were like all in black, like kind of like the rugby, the Kiwis, like New Zealand, and they were really hard, like the ultimate kind of computer team. It was something like that anyway. So there was that one. So yeah, loads of arcade games. NBA Jam, I remember playing that. Super Sidekicks, football game. Ridge Racer, used to adore Ridge Racer. That was just absolutely insane. You know, sitting in the car, Daytona, Killer Instinct. Yes, anything from that, the late 80s up into sort of like the mid-90s. I don't even think I've been... well, once off the top of my head, I've been in an arcade since. But even that was in like 1997. And the only reason I remember that is I went with my friend, his girlfriend, and his sister, Stephanie. We went out to Southampton for the day. And me and Sam got bored and we went to the arcades while they were shopping, of course. So, yeah. So, but as for what are your top 3 video games of all time? That's really, really hard to answer. To even begin. We're going to go with Magic Pockets, the music from Betty Boo, which is absolutely amazing. This one's on the ST, but the Amiga box is just the same. I've got the Amiga disc as well. We're going to go with Street Fighter 2. Absolutely adored that. A classic on the SNES. And another one. This one's on... Is this the Amiga? This one's on the ST as well, actually. Emlyn Hughes International Soccer. For me, one of the best football games ever made. And I'm not even joking. I absolutely love it. But I've got nostalgia with that going back to the Amstrad. I forced my friends to get it on their Commodore 64s and Spectrums. It's really good, actually, on all systems. So those are the 3 that I'd go with. But I could really interchange those at any given time. But those are 3 that I really do love. So thank you, Tom, for those questions. And thank you, Pete, if I didn't mention that before. Jimmy M. Thanks, Jimmy, for these questions. 3 probably tough ones, I guess. First one is, as a Brit, when you first came here, America, how was adjusting to the American way of life? Easy? Hard? With driving on the other side of the road and have different political process and so on and so forth? And would you say it goes both ways, as if someone from here, America, went there, the UK? How would they get on, hypothetically? I think life is, at times, I mean, it depends, of course, but it's as easy as you want it to be, or as difficult as you want it to be. You've got to kind of integrate a little bit. If you don't, you're never going to feel settled. You're always going to feel as if you want to leave, wherever that is. You've got to acclimatise to that way of life. You've got to accept it. If not 100%, you've got to largely commit to it. You've got to appreciate that wherever you are, people do things differently. They think things differently. They may say things differently. They have a different belief, a different way of doing things. And so I've always been very conscious of saying, oh, well, we do this in the UK. Every now and again it comes out in conversation. But I don't want to, like, stick out like a sore thumb, because I don't want anyone turning around to me and saying, well, why don't you just go back then? I mean, that wouldn't happen, and people aren't like that, as I touched upon before. But, so I always try, and since I've been here, which is nearly 10 years now, I've tried as best as I can to acclimatise. But at the same time, I'm quite a home bird, really, in the sense that, you know, I'm very kind of British in that sense, and I don't think those traits will ever disappear. So I am quite reserved at times, and I like the privacy, my own kind of privacy. So I'm not one of those who's going to go off to parties and stuff all the time. Every now and again, fine. So, yeah, but I was like that in the UK, so it's not really like, you know what I mean? I've always been like that. But but ultimately I found it quite easy. I think the main thing, because for the first almost year that I was here, I couldn't work. And the reason I couldn't work is I had to wait for a social security number, which in the UK is basically the equivalent of a national insurance number. And without that, you can't work. It's like no real proof, if you like, that you're in the system. So I had my residence card. I wasn't here illegally, right, obviously, but I didn't have my social security number. So that was difficult because obviously my wife had one because she's American, so she could just go off to work straight away, obviously. But with myself, I had to wait. So I had a lot of time kind of almost by myself. I mean, there's my wife's family are here for the most part. They live elsewhere as well throughout America and overseas. But there's some, you know, in California. So I found it quite difficult to begin with the first kind of few months, because really whenever you go somewhere, like on a holiday, on a vacation, after about a week or two, you come back home. That's the you know, what happens on a vacation, isn't it? Whether you're going somewhere else in America or overseas, you usually spend about a week or two and then you come back. Whereas for me, after a week or two, it was like, well, actually, this isn't a vacation. This is very real. So it started to get and combine the fact that I wasn't working, I didn't know that many people, it was a bit of a chore. It was hard. But once I got out of that, once I started working and you mix and you integrate with people and you start to pay your taxes because you're working and you start to explore the area a little bit more and you get to know people and you get to understand, it became very easy. But again, like I say, it's whatever you want to make it. You've got to go out of your way. You know, whether it's the UK or the US, any country for that matter, there's people who will move to a country and they have no interest, or maybe they do have an interest, but they don't know how to integrate and assimilate into society. And it's difficult. It can create a barrier. So you've either got to force yourself to do that, or you've got to have people who can help you integrate with society. And then when you do integrate, I think you become happier. You enjoy it more. You stop whinging and moping about the place. But yeah, you've definitely got to force yourself. So did I kind of answer that question? Driving on the other side of the road. I mean, obviously, I guess that takes a bit of getting used to. But like anything, you know, you do. I mean, I had family here quite recently. And initially, it was funny. My dad was driving, because obviously he had to drive up here from San Francisco. And initially, there was several times he went to take a turn in and go on the left-hand side of the road. And I'd have to be like, right. You know, he'd have to kind of quickly manoeuvre back into position. So potentially dangerous. But like after like a couple of days, he stopped doing it because you just acclimatise. You quickly realise what you've got to do. Question number 2. Do you think the microtransaction epidemic is going to continue in games until they raise the price of the game itself to $70 or $90, as the last price raise for them was almost a decade ago or so now? Yes. Potentially. I think if you think back to this generation, do you remember they were talking, i.e. Xbox One and PS4, they were talking about how games were going to cost $100. That was the big line that I kind of remember. And you could turn around and say, oh, well, it didn't actually get there because they're kind of 50, 60, 70. Well, really, if you think about it, they are secretly still $100 because they've got all these like kind of season passes. Now, you don't need them. It's additional content. But I think maybe that's what they wanted to do initially, was to put the season passes in the game and at launch have them for like $100. And now it's kind of optional, which is how it should be. But will there be a price rise? Actually, I'm not sure about it, because how many people really in this day and age, on the whole, buy release day games for like $60, $70 or more? I think most people tend to wait because we all see the prices plummet. They all come down. I talked about Titanfall in my last pickup vid, how that $60 at launch, I've just picked it up a year and a bit after release for less than $10. Many games are the same. So, yeah, if they were to put the prices up to, say, $100, there or thereabouts, I don't think people would bite. Obviously, some would, but would they sell enough to make a profit? I don't think they would. So they've got to be very clever with that. So I think keeping games at the price they are which, as you say, they've been at that price for a decade or more, really, probably maybe pushing 2 decades. I think that's at the possibly the right price. Even now, it's expensive, to be honest, but that's probably right. And then you've got the option of the season pass if people want to do that. But it's a dangerous game, this whole microtransaction thing. But you're not forced to do it, are you? That's the thing at the end of the day. It is greedy. They are earning a lot more money. But I'm not a massive fan. All these loot crates and stuff on Call of Duty and Battlefront, and you get the FIFA packs. It's a load of rubbish, really. But if I was a kid, if I was like 12, 13, 14, that kind of age, I'd be buying them. So I think maybe that's the market it's aimed at. It's not aimed at older people. I know, Jimmy, you're quite a bit younger than me, a good 10, maybe more, 10, 15 years younger than me. So I think maybe you're slightly out of their demographic. But yeah, particularly young people, really young kids, that's kind of who they're aiming at. Sorry, I'm just kind of looking at the clock every now and again thinking, Jesus, this video is going to go on a long, long time. But if you could pick one thing you wish the Americans did do that the people in the British Isles do, and vice versa, what would the Americans do that you wish the British people did? What would it be? This is a bloody tongue twister, this one, Jimmy. And then in brackets, the people and their habits and behaviours, government, etc. You can go wild with this one, I guess. Well, this is a difficult one to talk about because, in a way, I know you're into this, and it's nothing personal. Obviously, people can do whatever they want, and I know you're not a maniac or anything like that. But I know because I heard it on a recent video of yours that you say something like you like target practice, shooting guns, and all that kind of thing. I know a lot of people who do. It's an American thing. Now, obviously, you've got to understand where I come from. It's kind of seen as a bit weird. If you've got a gun, or if you want a gun, then you're weird. Now, it's not true. People aren't weird for them. Well, some might be. But I'm just saying that's the view. That's a stereotype. That's a cliche. That's what people tend to think in the UK. Because our approach, well, their approach over there, oh, how do you look at it? The approach in the UK is very much that guns aren't needed. They're just violent. They're dangerous. Nobody's got one. It's so hard for people to get one. Whereas in America, it's obviously quite easy. Now, it does differ from state to state, obviously. But there are some states where you can literally just, and it's perfectly legal, just to go to your local grocery store and get a pint of milk, and in your jeans you've got a bloody pistol, a handgun. And I find that really strange, really, really weird. And my argument has always been that if you have guns, it increases it's quite an obvious argument, it increases the chances of that gun being used in a heated debate. You know, let's say, for example, in the UK, you've got two neighbours arguing with each other. Now, what usually happens in the UK, then they have a to and fro, it's very, very verbal, you'll tell them to piss off, all the rest of it, you'll slag your neighbour off when your friends come round, you might blank each other, give each other like an evil eye when you see each other like in the driveway or whatever. You just don't kind of get on. In the worst case scenario, you might have like a fisticuffs and a bit of a scrap, but that's very rare, really, in the scheme of things. It's more a case, like I say, if you think they're a knobhead and you don't talk to each other, you give each other the silent treatment. And my only worry is in America, if the equivalent happens of two people rowing, it's so easy. In the heat of the moment, you're seeing red, redder than this, and you've got a gun and you use it because you're so angry. And that to me is a big, big problem. You're putting a gun into the hands of anybody. Now, I know you can say you've got to pass all these tests and maybe they're not as stringent as they should be, but the fact is, in my opinion, it's too easy to get one, and I just don't like them. You know, in my last job, I worked with a couple of people who regularly go target shooting, practice shooting, whatever you want to call it, and they love it, and they're really, at least, you know, I worked with them for 4 years. They seem nice enough guys, around about my age, and I didn't think they were particularly weird. I mean, I thought that hobby was weird because I'm not into it, for the reasons I just kind of said, just not grown up with it, and it's kind of, you know, frowned upon a little bit. But I remember we discussed it, and one of them in particular got quite defensive, and he was like, well, you know, if you want to ban guns, why don't you ban cars? Or why don't you ban knives and pencils and pens and stuff? Well, and I'll say now what I said at the time. Well, you can't ban pens or pencils because the purpose of a pen or a pencil is to write as a form of communication, essentially. Yes, technically you can use any instrument to do something bad with it, but that's not the purpose of it. There's no point banning cars, which was another one of his theories, because the purpose of a car is for travel. It's to get from point A to point B. Banning knives would be ridiculous. I mean, you could limit where you sell them, I guess. But banning knives would be pointless because really their primary use is for cutting food. That's what it's for, or other objects, not people. For carpentry and whatever it may be, building things. But the purpose of a gun, this is the crucial thing, is destruction. That's the only thing it's done. It's designed ultimately to kill other human beings. That is the point of a gun. So I've never liked them. I've always been quite a pacifist. So, long story short, Jimmy, that's what I'd change about the UK, about the US, is I'd ban them, quite frankly. But that's going to be impossible. It's going to be impossible. And even if it is possible, it's going to upset a lot of people, and it would take years upon years upon years to the point that it probably never actually happen. So I think just through generations, maybe through education, I mean, that sounds patronising, I accept that. I think it may change eventually in America, but I think it's a cultural thing in America, and it's probably never going to change, to be honest. Again, I work and have worked with people who are really down to earth, who don't have guns. They don't have one. They don't even want to get one. But, crucially, they wouldn't change the amendments, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. They wouldn't change it because they very much fear, paranoia, you may say, they're scared of the fact that it could lead to other things being taken away from them. I mean, I find that a bit weird. For me, the Constitution is so out of date, it's irrelevant. But listen, who am I to talk about it? You know, I'm a Brit, yeah, I'm in America, I've been here nearly 10 years. I'm entitled to an opinion, of course I am. But I wouldn't change anything in the sense that I can't. I don't have the power to. But yeah, so there's my long-winded kind of answer. I would ban guns because I just don't like them. But I do appreciate yourself, like I say, Jimmy, you're a fan of target practice or whatever. I do appreciate 100% that people, just because they've got a gun, or if they go to target ranges and stuff, I do appreciate not everybody's a maniac. 100% I appreciate and accept that. In terms of changing anything that the UK does, well, nothing, because we're perfect. No, there's a lot I'd change, mate. I think one of the things I'd change would be maybe, again, this is a cultural thing and it probably never will, it would be the aggressiveness. That's a funny thing, isn't it, about America? I talked about earlier about how people are very kind to one another, really, in my experiences, and very respectful, yet they've got like a gun culture, yet the UK doesn't have a gun culture, yet we're more aggressive towards one another over there with fighting and stuff. It's kind of weird how it works. Life is weird, isn't it? So yeah, maybe I wouldn't change the drinking culture because I don't mind a pint or two myself. But that whole culture of going out, getting absolutely pissed and off your face on a Friday night, and then having a fight, and I don't like that. I never have. And the UK does have a lot of that, really. So, but again, it might be stereotypes. Who knows? Because that's the funny thing. I've heard about it a lot more than I've seen it happen. So, yeah, that's what I'd change for that one. Thank you, Jimmy, for the questions. Thank you, Leigh, for these questions. Arcadiality. Don't speak a lot to Leigh on YouTube. Every now and again, he certainly leaves a comment, but we more kind of correspond through Twitter. Question number 1: worst Brit actor at an American accent. My pick is Tim Roth. Great when he acts with his own native tongue, but his US accent is terrible. Capital letters. Although technically you put Terribe, T-E-R-R-I-B-E. So that's Terribe. Very Terribe of you, Leigh, there. My answer, I think off the top of my head, Kevin Costner, Prince of Thieves, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, absolutely dreadful. I love the movie through nostalgia, that's what it is, but his accent is just horrific, it really is bad. Question number 2, what's the worst game you own? Due to nostalgia, I say worst because he uses, it's not that I never swear, but just in case, you never know who's watching. What's the worst game you own? Due to nostalgia, you just have to keep. Mine is Dragon's Lair on the SNES. Now, I've got a couple of props here, Leigh. When you say Dragon's Lair on the SNES, do you mean this one? Because I've got it, well, obviously got it, and this is quite good. It's a platform game. I mean, I quite like it, to be honest. But if you mean the other Dragon's Lair, like the classic, is it like Space Ace or the other one where you kind of press a button and it's a really delayed reaction? It's almost like set pieces, like a full motion video thing. If you mean that one, yeah, that's absolutely dreadful. But this one's not too bad. Not amazing, but not too bad. Now, in terms of a rubbish game that I own, which I've just got to keep, it's got to be Gaza 2. This one is on the ST or the Amiga, I don't know, but it's absolutely bloody rubbish. I had it on the Atari ST back in the day, and it's just a football game, but it is so bad. It really is. It's just rubbish. The playability is dreadful, but it brings back so many memories. Playing this in particular with a friend of mine called Rob, and it's dreadful. It's so dreadful. Licensed game, albeit by Paul Gascoigne, but just so bad. Terrible. One of the worst games I've ever played on the ST and the Amiga. Question number 3. Once you have most things collected in your gaming empire, look at that. Where is it? Here we are. Hey, the chances are that was weird, wasn't it? Once you have most things collected in your gaming empire, will your nostalgia ever tilt and die, or will you be 60 or whatever age, and still be playing SNES and Amiga? Yeah, I'll still be playing when I'm 100, mate. And I say that because the ST and the Amiga, I got my ST in 1991, and I'm still playing it now. I'm still loving it. Same with the Amiga. I still love it. The Super Nintendo, the Amstrad. I don't have one, but I love it. And that was like 25, 30 years ago for some of these things. So if I'm still doing it 30 years later, I'll still be doing it 30 years from now and beyond. So I wouldn't be surprised if I get to the age of 100 and get my letter from the Queen. She won't be alive then, not the current one anyway. That'd be weird, wouldn't it? She really would be a shape-shifting reptile if she's still alive when I'm 100. But yeah, SEGA 1985, thanks for the question, which is question number 1. Well, just one question. I didn't see any questions in the comments. I've had a few so far, mate, but thank you anyway. So here goes. Is there anything you miss about living in the UK, or is there anything you want to talk about regarding the UK? Is there anything I want to talk about? It's like a personal shrink. Is this free? Do I have to give you money for this consultation? No, I'm just pulling your leg, mate. Is there anything I miss about the UK? The only thing I'd say is just familiarity, family, friends. I guess that's the obvious one, isn't it? Yeah, I kind of do miss that. And because I'm a very nostalgic person, as I always mention on my vids, I do kind of miss that. I miss the familiarity of knowing where everything is, knowing who people are and how it is. And even though I've been here for a decade now, almost, it's still new. Every day I'm discovering like new words and stuff that we'll laugh about with friends and family. But I've never heard that phrase before, or that word. It's always happening, which is a nice thing, I guess. I mean, even things like going to the football, which I used to do regularly, and going to gigs. It's not like they don't do gigs here. I went to see went to see Radiohead in California last year. So, but yeah, friends, family, familiarity of streets and places I grew up and all that kind of thing is probably one of the things I'd miss above anything else, I guess. So thank you for that question. Alex, Nintendo Arcade. Do you believe in black holes? And then he's put only joking, although you could answer that if you wanted. And then he's got a second question underneath. A more serious one, if you like. Black holes, I mean, yeah, I guess they're out there, aren't they? But what's behind them? God knows. Yeah, it's really fascinating, isn't it, though? The whole kind of, is it like, well, it goes back to the Mandela Effect, with like parallel universes and alternative dimension. Who knows how it works? I mean, I'm quick, like many others, to pour scorn on all these things, but who really knows how it works? I was watching a video the other day. You're going down a bloody rabbit hole with this stuff. But it was a video on the moon landing, or the moon landings, and people obviously just debunking them, saying it's a load of rubbish, it never happened. And the danger is you can watch a video like that, where people who obviously are convinced it doesn't are presenting you with all this evidence that it didn't happen. And you can easily, because, like we're humans, we're easily swayed by things. And I'm watching this video going, bloody hell, yeah, maybe we didn't go. Because they're throwing all this information in your face. And then I watched a video about, this person said, well, we definitely did go. And then I'm watching it, I'm like, oh yeah, well, of course we did. But so whatever you want to, however you want to, whichever direction you want to go down, whatever you want to believe, you can believe. There's, it's, who really knows the truth, though? That's the thing. I mean, we can be mocked for saying things like, the world is flat, which just sounds obscene. Of course it does. But people can be mocked for having that view. But really, do we know? Or do we just think we know because we're told something, so we think that that's just the way it is because we're told it's the way it is? It's weird, isn't it? I am not saying I think the world is flat. Don't put me down in that category. I'm just saying. Oh, wish I never did now. Thanks a lot, Alex, for asking that question. Question number 2 is, but no, seriously, is there or are there many retro game shops or arcades where you live? When I was in Kentucky, I found quite a few. Wish there was more in the UK. It seems that retro markets are the thing now. Yeah, Alex, I've seen on Facebook when you were in America. I don't know if I commented or liked a few pictures or whatever. Yeah, it looked like you had a good time, mate. Kentucky's a bit too far away from me, so I couldn't have come over and had a cup of tea with you. Maybe one day. But do you know what? No, where I live, I've not seen any arcades whatsoever. I've not seen any retro game shops. There's one that springs to mind, one game shop, and that's just, hang on, what's it called? GameStop? Is that what we've got in America? I can't even think what you call it. But that's the only one, and that's in the mall. And it just obviously just sells brand new retail, modern stuff, really. Prices are kind of ludicrous for second-hand games. I've seen second-hand games that are more expensive than the brand new one. Who the hell prices them up? And of course, the joke that a lot of people give about this store or that store is that they give you really low trading values. I've never used it, but it's just the way it is. But no, I've not seen one. It's funny because I've been in a couple of second-hand stores, charity shops, thrift stores, all that kind of thing, and not once have I seen any games. I've seen everything else, board games and clothes, of course, and whatever it may be, pottery and anything, but never at DVDs, music CDs, but never games. Now, whether that's because people just don't trade them in, or maybe as soon as they do, they're taken straight away, snapped up by people, but I've never seen any games ever in any thrift stores in my area, which is absolutely bizarre. And I certainly haven't seen an arcade. Maybe in kind of San Francisco, which isn't too far away from me. I'm sure they'll have them there. But even when I've been in San Fran, I've never seen any arcades. But they must be there. They must be there somewhere. But what we do have over here a lot is our yard sales. So it's basically just think of like a car boot, but in your front garden. That's all it is, basically. And they're advertised all the time. Someone will just put a little, like a bit of cardboard, strap it to a lamppost and say, yard sale today, tomorrow, next week. And they'll put the name, like an arrow will point, in other words, to go down that street. And people just lay it all out on the front lawn. And you can just go through it all. Just a jumble sale, really. I've been to a few. I've seen a few games that way, because it's just ordinary people just selling their stuff. But I don't think I've ever bought anything. It's never really grabbed me. But yeah, it's a shame. I'd like to see some retro game shops, but I think I'd probably have to travel, like I say, San Francisco, or maybe even way further down to like Los Angeles, or maybe even like a Sacramento or wherever it may be. But none where I'm at. So that's definitely no arcades. So thank you, Alex, for those. Russ, the Wycombe Wanderer. As for questions, going to help you with your diet. It's just not going on. It's not working so far. By asking what your favourite ever meal would be, including drink and dessert. Oh, mate, ask me this question, Russ, every day of the week. You'd probably get a different answer. But just for today, you're going to be making this meal. So next time I'm in the UK, mate, next time we go to a Wycombe game, he's a Wycombe fan, as you can break the Wycombe Wanderer kind of, was a bit of a clue. You can cook me this meal. I will have spaghetti bolognese, just in the mood for some spag bol. A drink, let's go with, I've not had this for about 15 years, maybe more, but it's just the first thing that springs to mind. It's a bit weird. Vodka and lime. I'll have a couple of those, actually, please. Russ, stick your apron on, get in the kitchen. And for dessert, let's have some Angel Delight. Do they still make Angel Delight? It's like very 80s, isn't it? Maybe early sort of mid-90s at best. I have no idea if they still make it. Not butterscotch. I used to have that, but it was a last resort. Strawberry. Some strawberry Angel Delight in, and that will be the perfect meal. And taken in a football game. What more can you ask for, mate? So thank you for that one, Ross. Steve, AdiSneakerFreak, SneakerFreak, as in Adidas. So Steve's got 3 questions. Number 1, who's your pick for the Champions League this year? Come on, lad. Who do you think? It's going to be the Mighty Blues this year, isn't it? No, I think City are going to win the Champions League. I really do. I think they've got to win everything, to be honest. But that aside, I'm not going to win any prizes for saying my second pick would be Barcelona. Just because of Lionel Messi. That's really what it comes down to. But yeah, I really do think City are going to win it. I really do. I look an idiot when they don't win it, of course, but cross that bridge when we come to it. Question number 2. Have you played or seen sociable soccer yet? Yes, I have. Now, for anyone who's not familiar, Sociable Soccer is basically a remake, a modern version of the classic Sensible Soccer. And I've seen it. It looks interesting. I'll buy it when it comes out. Is it out yet? I keep seeing people playing it, but maybe it's like a demo, a beta, or whatever it is. But the worrying thing about this game is that it was meant to come out about a year or two ago, and it still hasn't. And that, to me, always makes you think, oh, bloody hell, why? Was it that bad that they had to kind of constantly put it back? I'm very curious to play it, and I'll buy it, but my expectations are pretty low. And I say that not just because of the delay, Christ, but also if you remember, I think you've got this game, Steve, but it's Dino Dini's Kickoff Revival on the PlayStation 4. Now, I've got that as well. And it's a remake, basically, of sorts of Kickoff 2, which is an amazing game on the Amiga, and ST for that matter, but the Amiga version is probably the best one, well, definitely the best one. And I love it, so much nostalgia for it. It's a very technical game. You know, Sensible Soccer was like kind of an arcade game, fast, fluid, and arcade-driven. Kickoff 2 is more of a simulation. It's one, really, which isn't as accessible for gamers. You've got to get into it, but when you do, it's really good, really good. And Dino Dini, the maker behind that game, has made one, it came out about a year and a half ago, I guess 2 years ago, for the PS4, and it's dreadful. It is so bad, it's unbelievable. Dino Dini on Twitter, understandably, I guess, is so defensive about it. I've seen people get blocked by him if they say something bad. He's very negative. He takes it very, very personally, is what I'll say. Again, kind of understandably. I remember saying something like, I think someone slagged it off. I think maybe I put a tweet out saying, looking forward to this is before it came, or just after it came out. And one of my friends replied to it and said, oh, it's rubbish, wouldn't bother. And then I replied to that tweet saying, well, that doesn't sound very promising, but I'll still get it because I want to see what it's like for myself. And Dino Dini liked the tweet. And I thought, how cool is that? Dino Dini liked my tweet. But when I got it myself, it was bollocks. It's so bad. And it was one of those where I went back to it a few months later and I thought, you know what, it can't be as bad as I remember, surely. And I went back to it and yeah, it's just dreadful. The controls are awkward. It's just woeful. It's really, really bad. And generally every review, most reviews say it's like kind of a 1 or 2 out of 5. And I've got to agree. I've tried to persevere with it, but it's just bad. I can't get on with it. I'll give it another chance, but I suspect that it's just a rubbish game, and sometimes you've just got to admit it. But yes, I am looking forward to Sociable Soccer. I just hope it's not like Kickoff Revival, i.e. just a massive disappointment. So we'll see. Because if you think, Sensible Soccer also came out remade for the PlayStation, the PS2 as well. I know I had it on the Xbox. And the, what else did it come out on another one, didn't it? What was it? Not sure. But those two in particular, the PS1 version and the PS2 stroke Xbox, and it was rubbish. I thought it looked quite nice. And it played, it's not that it played bad, it just wasn't very good overall. So, especially the PlayStation version. I also had it on the PC. It's kind of like in the mid to late 90s. Yeah, so I'm sceptical, Steve. I hope it's good, because obviously Sensible World of Soccer in particular, is amazing. Question number 3. Top 5 Amiga games and why? Top 5, oh, bloody hell, again. Now, I did actually pick 5 out, but this I could change this list at any time. Now, if we're not going to talk about Emily Hughes and Magic Pockets, because they could be in this one, the 5 that I'm going to give, I'm using these examples because they're all nostalgic, and I've got them all. So I'm not going to talk about things that I haven't got, which probably ordinarily would be on my list. So, weirdly, the famous 5, this isn't a piss take, 5 on Treasure Island. I've talked about this game many times before. On Buy It Nows, you will hardly see it, but when you do, you're talking 150, 200 quid or more. I saw one, the only one I've ever seen, a couple of years ago, which was listed for like 99 pence. There was one other bidder, and I got it for like less than a fiver. But it's so hard. I dare say if you look on eBay right now, you will not see a copy unless it's a stupid Buy It Now one for, say, 200-300 quid. Really hard to get. Nostalgic. I had it back when I had my ST. Again, that one. And I used to enjoy it. It's just a graphic text adventure. Think of like Monkey Island, but with less kind of mouse work and more using the keyboard. Like to type what you want to do, like interact with so-and-so, pick something up, walk west, walk north. It's just an adventure. Next up is Xenon 2 Mega Blast. absolutely brilliant with amazing music. I'm not exaggerating when I say the Atari ST music is better than the Amiga. It's basically the same, just digitized music, but the ST's got this kind of beat in there, which is just isn't present for whatever reason in the Amiga version. The main music, that is, not talking about in-game music. Yeah, so the Atari ST version for some reason is better. It's kind of weird, but really like it. A great shoot 'em up, lots of nostalgia. Next one up, I've done a gameplay for this one before, a good few years ago, which I totally forgot about until relatively recently. That game is Rodland, or Rodland, pronounce it how you will. I know a lot of people say it's Rodland, but then when you say England, you don't say England. So is it Rodland, Rodland? Oh, who knows, who cares? But a really cute kind of platformer game, really addictive, but deceptively difficult. You kind of get to, I said this quite recently, you get to sort of level 20, give or take, and it starts to become hard. But what I noticed with that game, and I noticed this with a lot of old games really, obviously there's some different, there are exceptions, but with Rodland in particular, or Rodland, I find that whenever I balls it up, it's usually my fault. I was being too greedy, trying to do something that I shouldn't have done. And I like that. I like it when you can blame yourself and not the computer, although when you blame the computer, that's good as well, because you've got an excuse. Next up is Lemons. I adore Lemons. Amiga, ST, absolutely love it. Look at this as well with the... see, I actually thought that was going to be the Psygnosis Owl, but that's, I think, on the inside. And there it is. There's a smaller version down there. Yeah, just a brilliant game. So addictive. Absolutely love Lemons. It's been pretty much on every system ever made, hasn't it? And then last but not least, and I've talked about this before, about the story of the day when I went to buy it. I coaxed my dad into getting it for me. It's Premier Manager. A really good, even today, plays really, really good football management game, basically. And there was Premier Manager 2, Premier Manager 3. It came out on the Mega Drive. Maybe other systems as well. Well, the PC for a start. But I absolutely love it. Still holds up today. It's a very, very good game. So thanks, Steve, for the questions. How many more do I have? Because the time, oh bloody hell. Ash, 81B for you. Should you get a CPC when I get a CPC? 3 games that you will have to buy. Oh my God. These top 3s and top 5s is like I'm struggling. Because the list will change. But the thing I'll say, Ash, is that with me, I still have most, not everyone, but most of my original Amstrad games. So I've pretty much got all the ones that I'd instantly want to buy back. A few exceptions I'd say is, what's that one you've shown a couple of times? Is it P47 Thunderbolt? That looks good. I remember seeing that in my copy of Amstrad Action and thinking, I really want to get that. And I've still to this day to get it, so I want to get that one. And then off the top of my head, I'd say, unless I still have it, I'd have to look, because like I say, 90% of my original games are back at my mum's house for the Amstrad. But if I don't have it, I'd say I'd like to buy back Batman the movie, which I thought was a really good conversion, and maybe something like, maybe the original Who Dares Wins 2, so not the one which I've got on that 5-star compilation, which we talk about a few times every now and again. It'll be like the standalone release. I think maybe something like that, or maybe even something like Turbo Outrun. I've got that on the Amiga. It's not a very good game, but I love the artwork. It's so nostalgic. So even though I have it, the box version on the Amiga, to see it in that cassette case with that artwork would really bring back memories if I saw it like the Amstrad. Or quite frankly, the Spectrum on the Commodore 64. But yeah, should you get a CPC, and I sort of did say when, I'm looking to get one, maybe this year. But listen, it's been years and years and years since I last had one, so no rush, as and when. But I would like to get one. But obviously, I'd have to get one where the belt drives have been replaced, because I don't want it to go wrong. So I'd have to make sure that that had been fixed. Although I do hear it's quite a simple task. Although people say that, you know, it's quite simple, but I'm not technical, so I'd probably struggle with doing that, to be honest, but maybe not. Question number 2. Did you ever go to a music festival? Reading in the 90s was great. It's funny you mention that, Ash, because the answer ultimately is no. But in the 90s, and I think it was 92, Reading 92, I used to pretend for about 6 months, I don't know why, I was like 13, 14, so you're at that lying age. Obviously don't lie anymore. But I pretended, for whatever reason, that I went to the 1992 Reading Festival. The reason how that lie came about is I was in a music shop called Big Brother, which I used to frequent quite a lot in my early to mid-late teens. And I remember picking up a couple of postcards, and one of them was Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, looking directly down the camera, kind of lying down or sitting on stage, holding a guitar, looking at the camera, and it had Reading 92. And I thought, oh, I'll buy that because it kind of looked cool, and I was into Nirvana at the time. And then a few days or weeks later, for whatever reason, I just decided to say to my friends, "Oh yeah, I got that at Reading '92. I was at Reading, and that's where I got it." And no one really, I say no one believed me. No one really disbelieved me because they couldn't prove that I didn't go. This is before the internet. There was no Facebook or anything, so it was just a case of if I told them I went and I had some kind of semi-proof that I went there, just i.e. just lying, talking about being there at the gig, then I could get away with it. I don't know why I did that. It was really peculiar. But it only lasted, I think I must have told that lie. Well, I don't know why I'm doing lie. It was a blatant lie. I must have said that like just a few times, but really weird. So no, I've never been to a festival, but I've been to loads of gigs before, big gigs. I talked about Radiohead before, Oasis, Happy Mondays, minor bands, Kingmaker, etc. But no, not a festival. Tried to get to Glastonbury a few times, couldn't get tickets. There was an opportunity once where I think we could have got tickets, but it just wasn't really working out in terms of transportation at the time. We were probably in our maybe mid to late teens. We could have got there, but it was a hassle. So no, never been. Never say never. I'd quite like to do the festivals in the future, though. Question number 3. Amiga game you really must get. Off the top of my head, maybe something like Monkey Island 2, Sensible World of Soccer, 96, 97, I think it's probably one I'd prioritise, but I'd want them all. There was 94, 95, 95, 96, and 96, 97. Beneath the Steel Sky, I'd like to get that one. I used to have that back in 95. I'd like to get that one back. I think it came out about 94, 95. It's quite a late release, I think, for the Amiga. So I'll go with those ones, just off the top of my head. Oh, Ninja Remix as well. I'd love to get that one. And also, to be honest, there's a load of really expensive games. One called Black Sect, which I don't believe is that good. It's very atmospheric. I think I played it on the ST, back in the early 90s. But it goes for crazy, crazy money. Maupiti Island, that's another one which can command a pretty high price. They're all coming to me now. Stormlord 2, excuse me. I believe it's called Deliverance. I'd like to get that one, but it's another expensive game. So yeah, there's a few for you to get me at Christmas, Ash. Thank you very much. I'm joking, obviously. I think I need to get you anything, a game, if anything, I should say, because I probably owe you something. I'm sure I do. Number 4, custard creams or chocolate digestives. Chocolate digestives, 100%, absolutely. And then, funnily enough, it says, my birthday soon, what you sending? What do you want? Gaza 2? Gaza 2 is yours if you really want it. It's a brilliant game. Absolutely brilliant. So thank you, Ash, for those questions. Craig, Minx36, is your game collection ever an issue with your wife regards the cost or space it takes up? Well, there's the space, mate. So it doesn't take up a lot of space, as you can see. Other than the TV, the big TV around the corner with the PlayStation, the modern stuff. That's it. That is my gaming, basically. Most of my games, if they're not out, down there, Amiga and some Switch stuff down there, they're in these like pull-out drawers. All my SNES stuff is down. Where is it? God, Jesus Christ! There you go. Can you just work that way? There you go. With this back to forth mirror reflection thing. So yeah, my SNES games are in there and in there. I think in here I've got my PlayStation 1 stuff. What's in there? Maybe like Saturn and some N64. PS3 are in the ones near the guitar. They take up a couple. There's like 150 or something crazy like that. So yeah, I've got quite a lot, but obviously it doesn't take up a lot of space. So it's never an issue. And this is a spare room at the end of the day. If you want to call it a games room, you can, but it's not really. Money, well, yeah, I do spend quite a lot of money on the games, but obviously I don't tell my wife that. If she ever asks, you know, if I bought a game for 100 quid, then I tell her it was a tenner. She doesn't know any different until she's watching this vid, and now she knows. Probably not going to watch it. So thanks, Craig, for that one. Adam, Shock16, is there a console you'd really like to collect for but never will? Maybe because it's too hard to get where you are, costs stupid money, or just a little bit too niche? Well, the Amstrad, really, Adam. Importing that is going to be a nightmare. It's going to cost a good couple of £100, but I do want one. And I guess in the scheme of things, is 200 quid a lot of money? In the scheme of things, probably not. So I'd like to maybe do that. The niche console, I'll probably say the Neo Geo AES, but again, that just costs stupid money. Not so much in importing it, because I can just get an American one. But as you'll know, I think you've got a few games, haven't you? They're really expensive. I know you can get a lot of cheaper games for it, 40, 50, 60 quid. Even that's a fair bit. But really all the best ones, or most of the best ones, they can go for hundreds upon hundreds or thousands. I'm just never sure I could do that. I used to have the CDZ. Is that what you call it? In fact, funny, let me just have a look in this drawer. I wasn't thinking about this. It's just literally kind of impromptu. But I do have some CD Neo Geo games. What are these, like Samurai Spirits, King of the Fighters, all that kind of stuff. So that's from back when I had one. So I wouldn't mind maybe getting the Neo Geo CD system in the future. But there's no rush. It's just, if I do, I do. I had one back in like 2000 or whatever. I thought it was decent, but I didn't think it was amazing. Back then, I quite frankly preferred the PlayStation, to be honest. But that was back then. So, question number 2. What is your least favourite console? Maybe one you've owned and didn't really get on with. Well, that's funny timing. Maybe the CD system. I know I just talked about bloody buying one back eventually. But it'll be like 15, 20 years later, so I may appreciate it. But yeah, first time round, the Neo Geo CD system, I just preferred the PlayStation. It had more games that I knew, that I was familiar with. You know, like, and you could buy them in shops. You couldn't buy Neo Geo CD games in shops. So I was resorting to eBay and stuff, which, all right, it's not difficult. You just go online and you do it. But PlayStation was a lot more accessible. Ridge Racer and all that kind of stuff, which I absolutely loved and will always love. So maybe the CD system for the Neo Geo. But probably one that I didn't really get on with, maybe the Jaguar, Atari Jaguar. Other than Alien vs Predator, which I did like. I didn't think it was amazing, but I thought it was good. Other than that, I just didn't really get on with it. Now, I did go through a spell 5, 6, 7 years ago where I started to buy quite a few Atari Jaguar games back, but I didn't actually get the system. And in the end, I just thought, I can't be bothered with this. So yeah, I didn't really get on with that. Other than that, I don't think so. I think it's just, maybe, this is slightly cheating, I bought a PS2 back about 6, 7, 8 years ago. I've still got it. I've never talk about it. Never show any games for it because I don't buy any for it. But I do have one. And I did get on with it at the time. I liked it. But I tried to play a few PS2 games the other day. And I struggled with it. Big time. But I did look dangerously, stupidly, at a few gameplays of some PS2 games the other day. And I was like, I used to have that one. And it's got me thinking, should I? Because they're cheap. Should I buy a couple of PS2 games? I guess if I do, they'll be on a pickup video in the future. But yeah, I did really get on with it back in the day, but I didn't get on with it when I tried to play the PS2 recently. So I think I kind of answered that question in a roundabout way. So thanks, Adam, for that. And then we've got, we're coming towards the end. I've got 3 people left. Dylan Craven. So my question for you is, what's your take on the controversy over changes in the YouTube Partner Program and the inability for smaller channels to monetize their channels? Sorry, again, I'm just looking at the time. Jesus Christ, this is going on a lot. Yeah, isn't it something like you need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours viewed in the last year or something, or on all your vids or whatever it is? Yeah, I mean, that should be quite easy. Well, 1,000 subscribers should be quite easy for a lot of people, but obviously not many people in the scheme of things. Clearly, smaller channels don't have 1,000 channels. But for all the people who really care about YouTube being a career, and the ones who are earning money as we speak, serious money, then they've already got the 1,000 subscribers, they've got the 4,000 views, or hours worth of views. So it's not going to be a problem to those. But yeah, it is kind of a problem for everybody else. But I've never really looked into this argument, to be honest, Dylan. I've just kind of read into it a little bit, watched a couple of vids. I don't really understand it too much. One of the things I'll say is, if this monetization has been taken away from the smaller channels who aren't reaching these criteria, how much money were they earning anyway? I'd probably guess not a lot. Now, you could say it's not the point, and maybe you're right. But would it have been like a tenner, 15, 20 quid? I mean, really, are they relying on that money? I don't really see it as that much of a big deal in that sense. But the bigger picture of YouTube really caring about big YouTubers who earn them as a business money, I think is a problem. Because it's channels like mine who've been around for 7, 8 years. I've got 1,500 subscribers. I'm not stupid enough to think that everybody watches, because obviously they don't. There's a lot of dead subscribers. I don't mean literally dead channels. I mean by that. People who come and go, watch a little bit here and there. All sorts of reasons, really. In the scheme of things, I've got a very small subscriber base. And I've never monetized my channel, so I've never earned a penny through it. and I never will. I don't mind if other people do it. It's up to you. I used to have a problem with it, going back a number of years when it first started, because it did come across as a bit greedy and a bit like kind of people getting too big for the boots. Like, who do you think you are? You're not a bloody presenter. But then after that, most people, to be fair, were against it. But as the months and the years went by, I started to think what I think now, which is, who cares? If you want to do it, it's your channel. You do what you want to do. We can use ad block if you really don't want to see ads. I think the latest annoyance is kind of the Patreon thing, isn't it? That's a bit silly. But again, if you want to do it, it's not my problem. The only other thing I'd say, and this could be to a benefit of myself and even you, but sometimes, just to give you an example, what I'll do is I'll go on YouTube and I'll look for maybe some latest goals that have been scored and they could have been uploaded, or some news which is really breaking. And how often these days, because I've noticed this as a trend, you'll go onto YouTube and a video will start, there's a clickbait picture, of course there is, and a video will start and it's like a computer robot, you know, kind of one of those voices. It's not a real person, and they're basically just trying to get views. Clickbait, monetized channels that are earning money. And there's hundreds or thousands of those channels. So maybe by doing this, it's going to get rid of a lot of those rubbish channels. Maybe that's what YouTube meant when they said that bad actors phrase, get rid of bad actors. Although that was a really weird way of phrasing it. So, but ultimately, what I want is I want the smaller channels to thrive. Because I personally prefer to watch channels like mine. I don't watch my own vids back, but you know what I mean. Ordinary people just showing off games, talk about music, talk about random movies. That's what I like. People who you can sit down and have a chat with and a cup of tea, you know, or go to the pub with, just very relaxed. That's my kind of stuff. I don't really like watching these big channels who come across as like presenters and, you know, the bloody editing everywhere and stuff. I don't mind a little bit of effort, you know, but it's not really my bag. So it doesn't really affect me, other than I'm hoping smaller channels don't get put off. And how does the algorithm work on YouTube as well? I'm hoping like smaller channels don't get pushed aside, and you've really got to do some rabbit hole searching to find channels like mine or maybe like yours and other people's in this kind of community that we're in. Yeah, if YouTube gets that way, that'll be quite sad. Because like I say, I don't want to watch all these big channels. I want to watch, for the most part anyway, I want to watch people like us. That's what I want to watch. So, thanks, Dylan. Oh, one more question. Another question. Is there anything you miss about the UK, i.e. food, TV shows, pubs, and watch the footy, that kind of thing? Yeah, I kind of touched upon it before. I miss familiarity. Certain food that you get used to, but really at the end of the day, you can get the same thing in America. Maybe different brands, bigger portions over here. TV shows. Excuse me. Do you know what? That doesn't really bother me as much because we've got the internet. You know, I still listen to things like LBC, which is like London's biggest conversation. It's a London-based radio station, but it's broadcast throughout the UK. And obviously it's broadcast internationally. Just go on their website and listen to it live. Listen to a little bit of 5 Live. I was listening to BBC Radio Manchester the other day for the sports section. Again, live, because of the world we live in. A little bit of talk sports still. So, in a way, the world it's still a big place, but now it's getting smaller than ever because of the internet. At the click of a button, we can watch the same kind of stuff. So, I do miss going to the football. I love football. I'm not as into it as in getting angry. I don't care anymore. I really don't care. But I do like watching it. I love the beauty of the actual game and the sport and the technique and the artistry and the drama behind it all. But gone are the days where I get angry if my team lose. It's like, so what? Just win the next one. So that's that. So thank you, Dylan, for that. Murray, 3 questions. Murray, Muzz247365. What's your handle name on Twitter? Is it Ghost Muzz? Something like that. Murray's got 3 questions. We've got 4 questions left, and then we're nearly, well, we'll wrap the video up. Bloody hell. Are you a buyer and seller of retro like a few other YouTubers, or do you tend to hold on to everything you buy? I tend to pretty much hold on to things. I'm not really one of those people, and I'm not judging, but I'm not one of those people who tends to buy something, sell it, buy it, sell it. Obviously, there's been exceptions over the years, like all of us do, for a variety of reasons, but really, no, I will buy something, and if I'm not playing it, I'll just stick it to one side, put it in one of these drawers. Like my PlayStation 3 games, I hardly play the PS3. But I've kept it, and I've kept that 150 games or so, because I know one day I'll probably play it. what's the point selling it? With that said, I have sold a few things recently that's made me think, oh, maybe I'd want to play that, but no rush. It's nothing I want to play today or anything. So yeah, I tend to keep hold of it. When I do decide to get rid of it, I tend to sell everything together. Like my Japanese N64 games went about 7 years ago. I didn't sell one or two of them, or just a handful, or sell them individually. I put them all collectively in one big bundle, got rid of them. That's kind of how I do things. But yeah, I tend to buy and keep. I'm not really much of a seller, and I'm even less of someone who buys, sells, rebuys. I don't really do that. How much time do you get to spend in your man cave? Yeah, a fair bit, to be honest. Not as much as I'd like. It'd be great to be in here all the time and playing on the computer or the consoles around the corner, listening to music, YouTube. But I do get to spend a little bit. I wouldn't even know what to put on it. At least an hour or so a day. Yeah, probably at least an hour. Sometimes a little bit more. At the weekends especially, I can really kind of chill out in here. But obviously it depends if we're doing something, if we're going out, if we're watching. Like a few weeks back, we watched Stranger Things at a weekend, all in one sitting. So obviously it wasn't in here. So yeah, I spend a bit of time in here. It's just nice to be able to retreat, isn't it? Away from the living room, just peace and quiet, listen to my music. But yeah, not that much, but enough to keep me happy. Question number 3, how is your pile of game shame? I keep walking past my PS4 collection feeling guilty. Yeah, well, the thing is, Murray, as I say, I put most of my games now behind this, so I never get to see them. It blanks it out completely. So it's like I never know that the games are there, but of course I do know they're there. If those games were to be on the shelf, I'd feel pretty bad. I'd feel guilty like you do with your PS4. My Xbox One games were, not so much now, they were out of control. I had so many that were sealed that I just didn't play. It was ridiculous. Somewhat addressed that now, kind of. But yeah, I've still got loads of games that I mean to play. Every time I buy a game, every time, 99% of the time then, the intention is there to play it. I'm buying it because I like the look of it, because there's nostalgia, because it's meant to be good. I know it looks interesting to me. I know I want to play it. But it's finding the time, isn't it? If I was in this man cave, I like that. If I was in here, longer than I am, then I'd probably play them. But it's finding the time in the day, other responsibilities and interests. I just find it too hard to play all the games. But I do all right. But like I say, crucially, hiding them behind these things really helps. So maybe that's what you need to do, Murray. Get yourself some IKEA shelving and some of these kind of pull-out IKEA drawers. Stick your PS4 games in there. Job's a good one. You won't feel guilty. So thanks for your questions, Murray. And then last but not least, we've got Damien. You recently bought a Switch. I'm looking at it now. I think I showed it before, didn't I? Has this encouraged you to buy back any retro handhelds you owned in the past? Well, kind of, but not really. For some time now, in the back of my mind, I probably talked about it a few months ago or even longer, I do like the idea of buying back a Lynx, a Game Boy, and a Game Gear. It's nostalgia, of course it is. I used to really like them. I have had them back at at one point, back in like the late 90s. So obviously that in itself is pushing, 20 years ago. But I've not had them since. So I have thought about it for a while now. It's nothing really to do with playing the Switch though. It was on my mind anyway. So maybe that's something for my channel in the future. But never say never. I'd want them boxed. I'd want them in good condition. But I do have nostalgia for them. And they wouldn't take up a lot of space. And Murray, of course, I'd just stick them behind these things so I'd forget I had them anyway. So maybe it's pointless buying them. But yeah, I'd quite like to in the future, Damo. So yeah, wait and see on that one. Maybe I'll get more before the year is out. But I think I said that for 2017 it didn't happen. But I would like to get them at some point. Yeah, a lot of nostalgia for all 3, Game Boy, Game Gear and the Atari Lynx. So yeah. So anyway, that's that. We're clocking in at pushing 2 hours. If you've watched all of this, if you've watched this in one sitting, Christ, well done. I don't think many people would have done. If you've skipped through it, I totally understand. Now, here's the problem, right? Here's the problem. Let's just be honest. Obviously, these questions and answers clearly add a lot of time, as I'm discovering, to the video. So it's up to you. If you want to ask questions, bearing in mind the videos are going to go on a long time, then please feel free. But it's going to mean it's going to go on a long time. But there's a timestamp, remember that as well. And it's additional content. You don't have to watch it. If I put up a video for an hour or two, this is the longest video I've ever done in my life, then you don't have to watch it. You can just watch what you want. So it's up to you. If you want to ask any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Just bear in mind it's going to be a long vid. Anyway, thank you for watching. Until my next vid. Apologies for the coughing, but 2 hours talking, Christ on a bike. What do you expect? Freezing, by the way, now. Yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next vid. See you later.